Hey, parents, have you ever noticed that the same battles keep happening in your house at almost the exact same time every single day? Maybe it's getting your kids off electronics. Maybe it's homework time. Maybe it's bedtime or getting out the door in the morning. Maybe it's sibling fighting. It's just constant. Maybe it's after school attitudes or your teens just shutting down the second that you ask them a question or how their day was. And every time it happens, you think, why are we doing this again? Like, what is going on? We literally just talked about this. They know better. And honestly, sometimes you probably feel defeated before the interaction even starts. You just know it's going to happen. You already know how it's going to go. Maybe you're avoiding it. Or maybe you prepare. Maybe you remind them. Maybe you explain or give warnings or you try to stay patient. And somehow it still turns into whining, arguing, stomping, eye rolling, yelling, slam doors, disrespect, all the things. Maybe it's even a complete emotional meltdown and total chaos. And if you're not careful, you can start believing that the problem is your child's reaction. But honestly, a lot of the stress in families comes from what happens after the reaction starts. Because when your child gets emotionally activated, you get emotionally activated too. And now nobody's actually leading the moment when we're both emotionally activated. Welcome to the No Problem Parenting Podcast, where you learn to lead your home with more confidence, clarity, and steadiness, even when behavior feels exhausting, emotional, or completely overwhelming. Last week, we talked about preparation and follow through. And I told you that this week we'd talk more specifically about what happens when your child still pushes back after you've prepared. Because this is where so many parents get thrown off. You think, I prepared them. I reminded them. I got my poop in a group. I'm okay. I explained the expectation. My kid knew what was coming. And then your child still melts down. And in that moment, it becomes super easy to panic internally. And you start thinking, this clearly isn't working. Or my kid's getting worse. Or maybe I'm being too strict. I'm doing it wrong. And maybe this isn't worth the fight. Maybe I should just let go and just give in. And then before you know it, you're over-explaining, negotiating, threatening consequences you can't even follow through on, or you're rescuing or yelling or defending yourself, or emotionally you're joining in on the chaos. And what I really want you to hear today is your child being upset does not automatically mean something has gone wrong. That's a huge mindset shift, parents, because somewhere along the way, many of us started believing that our job was to keep our kids emotionally comfortable all the time instead of helping them become capable over time. Dr. Leonard Sachs talks about this in The Collapse of Parenting, his book. He talks about how many parents have shifted away from being confident leaders in the home and into becoming emotional managers for their kids. And honestly, you can feel that pressure everywhere now. Pressure to explain every decision, pressure to negotiate everything, pressure to avoid disappointing your kids, pressure to rescue frustration immediately, or to prevent every uncomfortable feeling, and to let your kids lead the way. But here's the problem. When you become afraid of your child's emotional reaction, their emotions slowly start controlling the emotional climate of your home, not because your kid is bad, not because you're weak, not because anybody planned it that way, but because kids naturally push where leadership feels uncertain. And this is where no problem parenting shifts the conversation completely. The goal is not to stop every meltdown. The goal is to stop feeding the problem. That changes everything. Because many of us unintentionally feed behavior by matching the emotional intensity of the child. Your child gets louder, so you get louder. Your child gets disrespectful, and now you get defensive. Your kiddo spirals emotionally, and suddenly you're spiraled in the emotion too. And now the entire family is emotionally revolving around one moment. Listen very carefully, parents, because this part matters. I am not saying ignore your child, and I'm not saying feelings don't matter. And I'm definitely not saying become cold or disconnected. What I'm saying is you do not have to join the emotion in order to lead through the moment. That's what matter-of-fact parenting actually means. I teach this all the time. Matter-of-fact parenting is steady. It's predictable. It's clear. It's confident. It sounds like, you know what, kiddo, I hear ya. Yeah, that's disappointing. I see you're upset. The expectation still stands. We'll talk when your voice is respectful. You know what, buddy, you're going to figure it out, and I'm here if needed. I'm not debating this. Or it sounds like we're going to put this on pause and try again tomorrow. Notice what those responses are not doing. They're not escalating. They're not lecturing. They're not emotionally chasing the child, and they're not trying to win an argument. We're not explaining or over-explaining or shaming, no panicking. They're simply steady statements. And honestly, many kids today are surrounded by emotional intensity everywhere they turn. Whether it's social media, their peers, the stress at school, the constant stimulation, the constant opinions, emotional reactions. Many kids are just craving steadiness. Too much stimulation, TMI. They're not looking for perfection or a perfect parent. They're looking for steady leadership. And sometimes that means you allow your child to be temporarily upset without making it your emergency. And that's hard for many parents, especially if you grew up around anger or chaos or criticism or rejection or emotional unpredictability yourself. Because now, when your child gets upset, your nervous system immediately wants to fix it and fast. You want the noise to stop. You want the attitude to stop. You want the discomfort to stop. But sometimes your child simply needs practice moving through disappointment instead of watching everybody rearrange themselves around it. And that's how resilience develops. Not through avoiding the hard feelings, but surviving the hard feelings. And honestly, one of the biggest parenting traps right now is believing that every emotional reaction needs a giant emotional response. And it doesn't. At No Problem Parenting, we give problems only as much attention as they deserve. Not every behavior deserves a 30-minute lecture. Not every eye roll deserves a power struggle. And not every complaint deserves a negotiation. Nor does every meltdown deserve the entire family stopping everything they're doing to emotionally process this meltdown for hours. Sometimes less attention to the behavior actually helps the behavior shrink faster. It doesn't mean ignoring serious issues. Of course not. But many everyday battles get accidentally confused and fueled because too much emotional energy gets poured into them. Kids learn very quickly what controls the room. And honestly, many kids today have too much power emotionally in the household. And again, not because you're bad parents, but because you're exhausted and you're afraid of making things worse. So we kind of skirt around our kids' behaviors. But here's something important I want to share. Your child's temporary discomfort is not proof that you're harming them. Disappointment is a part of life. Frustration is a part of life. Waiting is a part of life. Being bored is a part of life. And boundaries are a part of life. Responsibility is key, and teaching that in a confident way helps our kids become capable of hard things. And a lot of battles in your home are also a lot more predictable than you think. You probably already know the moments that usually fall apart. You know your child best, and you know they struggle in school, or maybe they struggle after school, or you know bedtime becomes messy when everybody's overtired. You know that transitioning away from electronics is hard. And you know that your kid melts down faster when they're hungry. Or maybe you know that sibling conflict in your home ramps up during boredom. And you know that your teen gets mouthy when they're overwhelmed. But many of us keep walking into those moments hoping that, well, maybe today magically something will go different. And then when it doesn't, you feel blindsided all over again. But preparation, step 2 of No Problem Parenting, preparation means stop acting surprised by the patterns and start asking, hey, what usually happens before all of this falls apart? That question changes everything, because often the behavior started long before the explosion itself. The bedtime battle might have started 2 hours earlier, and now they've got the tired sillies and they're all amped up. Or the homework battle might have started because your kiddo never decompressed after school and they didn't get a break. And they're just in overwhelm. And maybe the meltdown in the store happened or started because everybody was rushed, hungry, just overstimulated at the end of a long day and emotionally overloaded before you even got to the store. Prepared parents stop focusing only on the behavior itself and we start paying attention to the setup. And then comes the really important part, preparing yourself too. This is huge because if you already know your child struggles with transitions, then you do need a plan for how you're going to respond when the pushback starts. Not if it starts, but when it starts. Because you know it's gonna. You decide ahead of time. I'm not gonna match the attitude. I'm not gonna lecture. I'm not gonna threaten things I won't follow through on. And I'm not gonna keep repeating myself 10 times. I'm just gonna stay short, clear, and matter of fact. That preparation, parents, is going to really change everything because emotional reactions usually create more emotional reactions. But steadiness creates safety and trust, I might add. Kids actually feel safer with adults who can handle hard moments without completely unraveling themselves. And this is where many parents finally start turning behavior problems into no problem, not because their child suddenly becomes perfect overnight, but because you stop feeding every emotional moment with more emotional energy. You stop personalizing every reaction. You stop panicking and chasing and overexplaining. You stop emotionally collapsing every time your child is unhappy. And instead, you lead them. You're steady, predictable, and as I like to say, matter of fact. And over time, your child starts to learn. My emotions do not control everybody else. The expectation still exists even when I'm upset. And my parents can handle hard moments. I can survive disappointment. That creates emotional safety and again builds trust with your kids and it creates respect. It's not fear-based respect. It's not harsh control. It's steady leadership. Your kid learns that you are capable. Your kiddo learns you can be trusted. You can handle the hard things. If you need to hear this, I want to give you permission. You are allowed to stop emotionally chasing every meltdown. You're allowed to pause before reacting to it. You're allowed to let your child be temporarily unhappy without making it your emergency. And you're allowed to stop feeding every moment, every emotional storm with emotional energy. That's not mean. That's leadership. And next week, we're going to talk even more specifically about how changing the conversation changes the behavior. Because sometimes it's not just what you say, it's how you say it or when you say it and how much emotional energy you bring into the moment. All right, now, before we end today, I want to say something that might completely change the way you look at your child's behavior. What if the problem isn't that your child is too emotional or too sensitive or disrespectful or too difficult? What if the real problem is that nobody ever taught you how to lead through big behavior without reacting to it? You were taught how to stop behavior, how to punish behavior, how to control behavior, or to fix behavior. But you weren't taught how to understand it without feeding it. The Becoming a No Problem Parent training will help you understand why the same fights keep happening in your home, why consequences sometimes stop working or don't work at all, why yelling makes things worse, and why your child melts down more with you than anyone else, and why you keep feeling emotionally exhausted trying to hold everything together. The training helps you stop taking behavior so personally and start seeing what's actually happening underneath it. Because once you see behavior differently, you respond differently. And when you respond differently, your child often starts responding differently too. Parents tell me all the time, my child didn't magically change overnight. But when I changed, the whole feeling of our home started changing. We had less yelling, less walking on eggshells, less emotional chaos, much more confidence, steadiness, respect, and connection. Not because I became a perfect parent, but because I finally stopped feeding the problem. I understand the root of the problem, I'm prepared for it, and I'm changing the conversation in my home. So if you're tired of feeling like behavior controls the emotional climate of your home, the Become a No Problem Parent training was created for you. You can learn more right now at noproblemparents.com. It's practical, it's short, it's easy to apply in real life, and it helps you become the confident leader your kids crave you to be. All right, we'll see you next time. Hey parents, if this episode shifted how you see your child's behavior or yourself, take the next step. You'll find practical tools and support at noproblemparents.com to help you lead with clarity and confidence. Less reacting, more leadership. That's No Problem Parenting.